All right, guys. Hi, welcome to the High Life Media webinar on advertising in cannabis. Of course, the first thing I want to do is thank, I hope this isn't an unusual angle for you, but I'm in my office and just wanted to make sure that we had internet, there weren't any disruptions. So first thing I'm going to say is thank you to the Florida Cannabis Coalition, Love, Carlos and Pete and Tom Quigley and Mike Wong. They always support everything we're trying to do in the industry. They're trailblazers, and I'm so honored to be associated with them. I have a few things that, I have some notes that I wrote down. I'll just first, I know we're going to talk advertising, but I also want to talk about, a little bit about branding, a little bit about marketing. Just so, my background, I'm going to share a little bit of what I've done in the past before you guys came to know me in cannabis, so you can understand the perspective that I bring to talking about marketing, talking about branding, talking about advertising. So I am the Vice President of High Life Media, and that's how I got this opportunity. Our president is Bob Riley. He works tirelessly. He wasn't able to make it today, but he works tirelessly to make sure that we get our magazine out, which is High Life Magazine. Please pick up a copy. We will have copies at all the Florida Cannabis Coalition events, so stop by our booth. I am also General Counsel for Minorities for Medical Marijuana. If you're not aware of the organization, it's a fantastic organization led by Roz McCarthy. She's the founder and president. Eric Range is the chair of the organization, and they're all about inclusion. And that's really important for you guys to be aware of, especially if you're trying to advertise in cannabis. Get the word out about your brand and really position yourself as a brand that works with diverse individuals. So definitely want to look on the Minorities for Medical Marijuana page, which is www.minorities with the number 4 medicalmarijuana.org. So definitely reach out to Roz, consider joining and becoming a member and just interacting with all the wonderful things that organization's doing. I'm General Counsel for Patients with Patients. We actually were blessed to have a webinar last week where we talked about patient access issues, the elimination of the 90-day rule, some of the illnesses that we would like to see added to the list for recommendations for Minorities for Medical Marijuana. So that's another organization I'm involved in. I have to actually look at my list. Another organization which really ties into today that I'm affiliated with is Cannabis Life Radio. So I am the co-host of Cannabis Life Radio, which comes on every Sunday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Love doing the show. Great opportunity to advertise. And we have listeners, like every show that we do, we actually have radio listeners, and then we also have internet listeners who listen through our Facebook live feed. So just to give you an example of the reach, and I'll talk more about that, for a given show, our reach can go up to 300,000. Our views can go between 40 and 90,000. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm a distributor for Green Roads World. So I live in the CBD space. I myself have a product that I position. So I go through everything that I'm talking to you about today. I've gone through myself as far as how I brand myself. Carlos mentioned that I work and I'm affiliated with a number of organizations, a number of individuals and key players. Well, a lot of that is branding and marketing. A lot of that is, how I advertise myself, how I present myself. So I'm going to take you through some of the tips that I use. So what did I do before cannabis? One, I have a bachelor's degree in business management as well as marketing. So a minor in marketing. So I use that educational component as far as how I applied to the jobs that I've had in my life and my own entrepreneurship aspirations. So with that said, I spent 7 years working for T-Mobile USA in various roles. I started on the phones taking calls, became a supervisor, and then the next thing you know, within a year, I was a deployment manager responsible for deploying technical solutions at call centers across the country, working with the company, taking them through a series of mergers, and also responsible for the retention strategy. I left T-Mobile USA and then went to T-Mobile UK. I spent 3 years in England at T-Mobile UK. My role there was marketing, being a marketing interface manager. So I basically took the vision of the marketing department and translated that into the call center environment in the form of training and processes and procedures. So, there's a strong marketing focus on what I've done prior to becoming an attorney, and then becoming involved with the cannabis industry. I worked for Metro PCS. I did a lot of acquisition there, so I understand the sales process. I understand the store environment. I understand the online environment. So those are the types of things that I bring in. I am currently an attorney with Minority Law. So most of you, anyone who knows anything about cannabis, especially in Florida, has heard the name Michael Minority. He's a great attorney. He's a great activist. He's very leading Regulate Florida. He collaborates with a lot of organizations and really has his finger on the pulse of what's going on in the cannabis industry. So I just wanted you to have an understanding of my background, why do this webinar? We'll talk about that. I see a need. I see a lot of people with the startup thing and getting started. How do I position myself? How do I compete? A lot of it has to do with how you brand yourself, how you market yourself, how you distinguish yourself from the others. Especially in Florida, the supply for many things really exceeds the demand. When you look at the dispensaries, we want more dispensaries. We want more dispensary locations for patient access, but we are also dependent on that patient count. So we want to make sure that the supply is there, that there are dispensary locations where people live, work, and play, but we also want to make sure that we work to drive that demand through increasing the patient count and people having access to what they need. So as you start your businesses, most people end up in the ancillary business space. What does that mean? So ancillary businesses are things that touch the cannabis industry. You may not touch plant. You may or may not touch plant. Your security, your testing labs, your marketing, your labeling companies. Those are all areas that can thrive with this cannabis movement, but you're kind of dependent on the core function of the dispensaries, how many dispensaries there are. Do you have an inside track to one of the dispensaries to kind of get access to the people who make plant available? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I think one thing that's really key to understand is you cannot boil the ocean. I use that term a lot. And when I say boil the ocean, I mean you can't do everything. You can't be everything to everybody. It's all about really being targeted, really being strategic, really being specific. You are limited by finances, most of you. You are limited by time. You can't do everything. You can't fit everything in 24 hours. Many of us have families. I have my son. So you really have to think before you act. Think before you plan, think before you spend. And that's something that many people lose sight of as they're trying to launch their company. It starts with a spark or an idea. I think the best ideas are the ones that come as a result of solving a problem. So you identify something that's problematic. You identify a need of the company, of the industry, I should say. You identify where everyone else in the business is doing things a certain way, but you have a way to kind of vary that in an appealing manner. So problem solving is really the best approach when you have an idea. So beyond having an idea, of course, you're going to have to finance it somehow. So part of this advertising is figuring out who's your core customer, but also how can you attract the finances that you're looking for. So when there are a lot of people who are investors, and they go to a lot of the Florida Cannabis Coalition events, and they say, you know, I just want to get in. And they have finances, and you need finances to make your idea, that spark, come to life and become a reality. But you have to attract them. You have to appeal them. And we're not going to talk about complete business plans today. We're just going to talk about really being focused, specific, and targeted in how you're looking at things. You know, when you look at customers, who's your customer? There's your external customer, and then there's your internal customer. And then there are partners, and then there are investors. So just the internal customer, those are the people who will be a part of your company. Those are the people who represent your brand, and you have to really be specific when you're targeting talent. This also applies when you're attracting partners. You want to make sure you know, this is what I stand for, and everyone you associate with your brand needs to be consistent with that and stand for the same thing. That way you avoid conflict, but you also avoid being in a situation where you have to remedy a bad situation. You have to pull back. You have to fire someone. All of those things are costly. You want to be in a position where you can identify the right talent. You can let them do what they're instructed to do based on your values that you've set up as a company. And then you need to inspect what you expect without having to micromanage. The reason why that's really important is because you're going to have more great ideas, or you're going to have an opportunity to grow and expand your company. You can't do that if you're micromanaging. You can only do that if you really put the time in the beginning to set up your brand, set up your core values, set up your mission so that everyone can align with the mission, choosing the right partners and other decision makers within your organization so that everything just flows in a way that all you have to do is really inspect what you expect, but not micromanage. So one question you need to ask yourselves as someone trying to advertise in the industry, getting into the industry, why cannabis? The answer to that question really should drive your marketing and advertising strategy. Are you getting into the business to help people? Are you getting into the business because you have an ailment? Are you getting into the business because you lost someone that you shouldn't have lost if there was more awareness about cannabis, or there was access in your state, or your doctors were more educated? Really tap into that reasoning that you're even getting into the cannabis industry. It can't just be about, you know, I hear about Colorado making however many $1 million for their economy. Everyone, you know, seems to be talking about it. I think I'll get into this business. You have to go deeper. You really have to reflect and have a message around why you're getting into the space. You know, we like to call it be an elevator pitch. Sometimes you'll be at these events, Florida Cannabis Coalition events and other conferences and events, and you really have a limited period of time. Let's say you go to, there's a speaker, and you go to their session, someone you admire, and then, you know, when the speaker's done, everybody kind of crowds around them, and they go to speak to them and say, hey, I love you, or yeah, I loved what you said about blah, blah, blah. You really, like, your placement there is a lot of times you may truly be just a fan of that person, but it would be a missed opportunity. You weren't able to position what you do as a business owner. So that's why you have to really craft carefully your elevator pitch. An elevator pitch is, usually around 30 seconds. If a person will give you more time than that, then continue discussions with them. But when you're approaching someone, count on the fact that you may have a maximum of 30 seconds. And how can you showcase all the benefits of them maybe logging onto your website, maybe talking about you in their next seminar, maybe flying you out to their location, maybe coming to visit your distribution center or your office, maybe putting their name on your flyer. Why not take advantage of that opportunity by having a carefully crafted 30-second or less elevator pitch that showcases that why? It highlights that why. In your elevator pitch, that's not the time to say, well, there's a lot of money in this, and I can make you a lot of money. That's not really what an elevator pitch is about. An effective elevator pitch usually it's a little emotive. It's sound as far as you being capable and determined, and very much a visionary statement. And clearly with the call to action at the end, like, I want you to join us at our next blah, blah, blah. I want you to put our logo on your website if you don't mind, because I think we can touch a lot of people. I want you to partner with me when I work with the Epilepsy Foundation. So again, that elevator pitch is critical as far as getting your point across, networking and mixing with people, and really getting them to act. When you're going to networking functions, it's not just to collect business cards. That's easy. That's the easy part. It's not just to give away your business card. It's all about getting someone to take an action, whether it's purchasing one of your products, whether it's putting you on speed dial, visiting you. You really need to understand your why, so that can come across very clearly. And you need to understand that step action, that behavior that you're trying to drive. With advertising, that's the same. When you're advertising, we'll talk, and I'm about to move on to targeting and segmentation. But when you're advertising, you have to bring in or make sure that why comes across. And that builds your credibility, but also understand the who that you're targeting and what you want them to do. A mistake that a lot of people make in advertising is they negate the impact of influencers and purchasers. So you need to understand who they are. Sometimes they're the same. So, for like women's shoes, usually the person who's going to make the transaction is the same person you're trying to influence in your messaging, but it's not always like that. For example, I have a 5-year-old son who watches Nick Jr. all the time. Those ads on Nick Jr. target him as an influencer to myself, who's the purchaser. And they're very specific about that. And he's like, I want that toy. And then I have to figure out how to make that happen for him, because he may really, really want that toy, and I want to make him happy. So again, you need to really reflect and understand the emotional piece of it, and know, who am I targeting? The person who's actually making the purchase or making the decision, or am I targeting the influencer? Am I targeting an attorney, so that attorney knows that I can make their life so much easier for their client if they get their client to have me as a consultant? You need to understand what you're trying to do. So the target, whether they're the actual purchaser or influencer, and what that call to action step is that you'd like them to do in what period of time. So let's talk about the product. This is another don't boil the ocean moment. So when you have services, when you have products, a lot of times, you know, we have the natural tendency to want to put everything out there at the same time. That's not always necessary. That's not always wise. Sometimes you really need to, one, have varied messages based on the audience, or you need to say, you know, these are our core products, and then people will click here or go to this, you know, or inquire about this product, and then I can lead in with this other one, or I can bundle this other one. And it's the same with services. So when you're advertising, you need to think about, you know, is it just going to look like a scramble of unrelated concepts just because they're all under your company brand? Or is it going to be, it's relatable, or it appeals to that specific grouping? I'll give you an example. So one of the companies I work for, one of my clients, Green Roads World, Green Roads, they have two lines. They have a Green Roads Wellness brand, and they have a Green Roads World brand. They're completely different. Similar products, sometimes the same product in different packaging, but the way that it's positioned, very, very, very different. The wellness product is targeting physicians, providers, people who provide services, people who are very health focused. The World brand is people who are cannabis enthusiasts. They understand the value of CBD. They may still utilize THC as well, but they understand the value of CBD, and they'll be interested in, you know, a lot of products. You know, gummies, which are, you know, basically a candy version of getting your CBD, but that you'll find more on the World line, whereas on the wellness line, you'll find things that are more medicinal. So that's just an example of really understanding that you can't just put all of your products in the same space, advertise them the same way. You may need to have separate websites. You may need to have separate advertising posters and things that you give away. So we talked about, you know, with your product mix, making sure that you are, you know, you are solving a problem. I think that's the key strategy. So something that I've observed in this cannabis space specifically is, you know, we don't always make the distinction as to whether we are targeting, you know, B2B, meaning we're targeting businesses, or targeting B2C. It's really important that you think, I'm not saying that you can't do both, because I do both for different things that I work on. So when again, let's look at my CBD business. I target end user customers and I tell them about CBD, but I also target people like a business that, someone who wants to open a CBD store. And I do them separately, but I approach them differently. And if I were advertising, I would advertise to those different groups very, very, very distinctly. With the business, it's, you know, you talk profit margin, you talk about ease of startup and things like that, how it'll be consistent with what they're already doing. When you're talking about to the customers, really, I focus on, for that particular item, talk about health benefits. But a lot of times it's very, very muddled in the space, and people aren't sure. They'll just like, it's like whoever they're talking to, they're like, okay, you can be my customer, but it's not clear as far as whether they've really made that conscious decision, whether they're doing B2B and B2C. At Florida Cannabis Coalition events, and they have booth space available, which is extremely reasonable in price. So I highly recommend that you, if you can't afford it, get a booth. You're going to see a mix of a lot of things. So, and it's a great opportunity. If your end user customer is who you're targeting, there are a lot of end user customers there. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of patients who attend the Florida Cannabis Coalition events. So make sure that if you do get booth space and you are advertising, or you're honored enough to be one of their speakers, you remember that this is an industry event. However, we're talking to, there are end user customers here there are physicians who are also here, and then there are businesses who are also here, and making sure that the messaging is appropriate. So when you talk about, segmentation, customer segmentation, there are a lot of demographics you have to look at. With cannabis, the age demographic is very tricky. There is a predisposition for companies to really go strictly youth focused, and I think that's a huge mistake that people are making. Michelle Weiner is a physician. She does a great webinar with FCC about medical marijuana for seniors. But a lot of times we're looking at the youth market because we're thinking about, again, it's the former stigma of the industry and making things fun and youthful, etc. But we need to make sure that we have, again, messaging for the youth, the younger generation, messaging for the professionals, because the stigma, we're eliminating the stigma. A lot of people who ordinarily thought they couldn't enter the space, that they couldn't be vocal about their involvement with cannabis or their relationship with cannabis, now they're seeing that it's more accepted. So how do we let them know, well, these are the latest innovations. You may have, smoked in college, but we've come a long way past that. And my company actually provides you with, let's say it's a vaping mechanism, like making sure your message can target that professional person in a way that they're not intimidated, that they don't go flying right into the cannabis closet, but they know that we've evolved past just joints in college, that this is a true industry. And then also with the seniors, making sure that you're targeting to them in a way that focuses on, the quality of life, length of life. I've seen some great ads where it's, they're the older generation playing with their grandchildren. That's very emotive. That's a great motivator as far as you need cannabis in your life, whether it's CBD, whether it's actually, medical marijuana in some form, whether it's a discrete delivery mechanism that you have as a product, whether it's a magazine like High Life magazine, or listening to our Cannabis Life radio show. You need this education in your life. You need medical marijuana in your life. You need this because it'll provide you a better quality of life. You'll be able to enjoy your spouse. You'll be able to enjoy your quality of life. And that you need to make sure is clear. But if you stick to just youth targeted messaging or stoner related visuals, you're not going to target that group. And that is one of the fastest growing groups in this industry, is the senior community. So we talked a little bit about, age, we talked about occupation. Let's talk about, patients. It's very delicate how you target patients. You want to make sure you don't come across as you're just trying to milk their ailment. You're trying to milk their particular illness for your financial gain. You need to, if you're targeting people who are sick or people who love people with illnesses, you have to do your research. You have to understand. You can look at things symptomatically, and that may cover a variety of illnesses without you. So keeping it that general, you can speak to people with a number of illnesses. So let's say you're talking about, again, I'm saying chronic pain, and I know based on Florida law, chronic pain is for medical marijuana. Chronic pain is tied to one of the enumerated illnesses on the list. But when you're talking about, pain happens whether you have gout, sickle cell, ALS, MS, so a variety of illnesses. But the key with that is, so you can touch a number of people if you have something that will relieve that or help them, or a delivery system, let's say, for people who have, like spasms, or with Parkinson's, they are, they shake a little bit. So, for those people, if you have a mechanism that'll help them deliver marijuana in a way that they're not spilling everything and things like that, that'll be a service to them. But the key is being sensitive. You're not focused on them making money. You're focused on solving that issue, solving that problem. And also what needs to come across is your credibility and the fact that you care, your company cares. You advocate for them. You want them to have a better life. And in what we do, it really, truly should be about the patients that we are serving, especially in a medical state. When we go recreational, it'll be a little different. Right now, we're in a medical state, so we have to be really careful that we're not sending recreational messages in our advertising when we're in a medical environment, because that may turn off some people, unless that's specifically the group that you are going after. So that's why targeting is very, very important. Understanding the disabilities that you are trying to alleviate, that's very important. Another group that we neglect, so we talked about when we're advertising and marketing, we neglect to include the elderly, the senior community. Another group, and they fall strongly in the influencers category. Another group that we fail to reach out to are the caregivers. Caregivers are decision makers a lot of the time. Caregivers are influencers. Caregivers often are the actual purchasers. And with all of that, caregivers have a lot of stress. So they may need medical marijuana as well. They may need CBD as well. They may need some of your services as well to make things easier, whether it's a delivery service, whether it's I have a how you cook with medical marijuana class that I'd like to educate you on. Well, you may want to not only think about targeting the patients, but then have other messaging that targets caregivers and how you can optimize their time for the people that they're taking care of, which a lot of times are their loved ones that they care a lot about. So I wanted to call that out as far as when you're advertising, making sure that you don't forget about, the senior community while you're targeting the youth as well, and also the caregiver community. And the key is to be solving a problem. So one thing that I wanted to highlight is we talked about, selecting your product range, solving a problem. But the name of your company is extremely important. So, or the name of your brand. So they can be different. Sometimes you have a brand name that is just like LMNOP educators, LMNOP distributors, or something to that effect, and that's fine. And then you can also set up a doing business as like a fictitious name. And that's something that, an attorney can help you with. I'm more than happy to help anyone with that. Setting up your organization, setting up your fictitious name. But whatever name you're operating under, and that'll include what you're operating under for Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, you should put a lot of careful thought into it. One, you want to come across as, again, you want to move that problem you're solving. So is it holistic care centers, blah, 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 or, something like that. That there's a little controversy is whether you want to have cannabis in your name. In the past, when it wasn't as accepted, having cannabis in your name means you can't get anything done. You can't open a bank account. You can't, you can't register as a nonprofit, and that's still an issue as far as getting your IRS distinction for being a nonprofit. So if your objective is to, be a nonprofit and you want to make sure you don't have any issues with funding, you really need to think about or make a decision about, do I want cannabis in my name, or do I want CBD in my name? Those are the things you need to think about. What will you call your company? And do you need a fictitious name that you actually do business under? And how will that fictitious name, or that name that you're creating a brand around, how will that be received by lawmakers, by people, at agencies that you need funding from your customers themselves, from the social media platforms that you're utilizing to advertise your company? All of that plays a role. So you need to put quite a bit of thought into that. Same with your logo. So when you're developing a logo, it should be something that reflects your why that we talked about in the beginning, something that reflects what you want to be in the industry, something that is distinct from other players in the industry, because the last thing you want to do is come up with a concept and then build a brand around it, build a customer base around it, and then someone contacts you and does cease and desist letter saying, you can't use that logo anymore because you stole our logo. And you're like, no, I didn't. I thought of it myself. But, those are things you need to think about and consider as you're creating your branding materials, as you're deciding on what your logo should be. And once you commit to a particular name and a particular logo, you need to place that wherever you can. When you're posting videos on Facebook or wherever, have your branding on those videos. When you're posting pictures, do the same thing. High Life Magazine, Bob Riley, he does a great job of that. When he has videos playing, there's usually a High Life media logo at the bottom, so that's our content. When it's shared, that's our content. When people post, etc., it just follows the brand. So you want to make sure you brand everything that you do. Doesn't mean you can't have a number of brands under your company, but you definitely want to put a lot of thought into what that is, and then let it take you, go everywhere with you, but also make sure that you're not infringing on something that another person is doing or has created. So just talking about naming and branding and logos, you have to think about your geographic targeting as well. So are you just a Florida-based company? When I hear about Florida Cannabis Coalition, it's clear that they're just looking to operate in the Florida space. However, High Life Media, we are a Florida-based magazine, but there's still opportunity for us to go to other states and do things in other states because we're not that specific in our naming. So that's also something you want to, say, if I'm super successful and I get an opportunity to expand, or someone contacts me from, Wisconsin, and they want to do the same thing I'm doing from a franchise perspective or whatever, how is that going to work? Are you going to say you're going to change from Florida Cannabis Organization to Wisconsin Cannabis Organization? Or are you going to keep Florida Cannabis Organization of Wisconsin, or just keep Florida Cannabis Organization, period, whether, across the country? Those are things you should think about as part of your long-term planning, your long-term growth strategy. So I just wanted to call that out. Your colors. There's a lot of green in this industry, and I love it. I love the green. I love everything about green. I was looking for a dress for the Big Brothers Big Sisters gala I went to with Green Roads the other day, and I was like, I want a green dress, but if you can't find a green dress, I want green in my dress because I represent this industry, and I'm proud of it, and it's important to me. So when you're developing your color scheme for your logos and everything you do, you want to be consistent. You want to have your set colors, whether, they say blue is calming and exudes power, and gray and black are super professional, white's very sterile, green means growth and money and, things like that. Look at the materials that are out there. Look at the studies on how people respond to colors. The easiest thing to do in this industry is go for green, but you may want to do something different. You may want to do green and gold, like Minorities for Medical Marijuana. They've done a great job with their branding as far as, they have that green, gold, black. And I always joke that, hey, we're using Jamaica colors because, Jamaica's, really known in the cannabis industry and people relate marijuana, which make a lot of the times good, bad, or indifferent. But I love how with minorities for medical marijuana, they're very clear. Their colors are bold. Their colors make you want to be a part of it. So as you're developing your logo and everything, don't think you necessarily have to stick with green or shades of green. You can do other colors and still be in the cannabis industry, or you can partner shades of green with other colors. When you go to the next time you go to Florida Cannabis Coalition Canada and you see the sponsors backdrop, look at it carefully. Look at how things pop. Like what's appealing to you. You're going to see a lot of green as far as the sponsors for the event, but what is most appealing about different logos versus the other? Or is there one that's not green at all that really stands out because you're in a sea of green logos and you're the one that's different? So those are things that you should be thinking about. And then finally, your business card. So a lot of times we come up with like an idea and we incorporate our company as a corporation or LLC, blah, blah, blah. And then we're like, yeah, I'm going to get my business cards made, and we take forever. Like business cards are so, even if you're still flowing through what you're trying to do, always have your business cards. Always start branding from the beginning. Even if you just print, I even tell like my law clerks, I'm like, no, you need a business card just saying that who you are, what year you are in school, because you're going to meet people. So I implore you, even if you haven't figured out your full marketing strategy, make sure you print at least 50 business cards. You can always reprint them when you change them or make them more professional, or even if they don't have your logo and you're using a random template at Office Depot. That's really important for you and advertising. The thickness of the business card says something about your company. The glossiness of your business card says something about your company. All of that is advertising, because a lot of this space is networking, who you know, making those connections, making those contacts. So even in deciding on your business card, your temporary business card, be clear what you're trying to do. If you, I just printed it at home. If it looks like you just printed it at home, you can tell people when you're giving, oh, these are my temporary business cards, but it's still sending a message. So use the Vistaprint. They do different thicknesses, make it look official, and then go low cost but official looking, so that you're sending the right message about your brand, because you don't know if when you get your official business cards, if you're going to see that person again. That first impression will be a lasting one. So let's talk a little bit about the different types of media that's available. I'm going to talk really high level about print. So the perception as far as print is that print is dead. Nobody wants to do print. It's really super expensive. Print is expensive. But in this space, when you can't advertise in a lot of spaces all of the things that you need to, like medical marijuana, because of the federal, this federal scheduling issue. Sometimes pages get pulled down. I'll talk a little bit about that. Print's a great way to advertise. So I'll just use our magazine, High Life magazine, as an example. It's affordable. You can get a full page for like $1,200, $1,400, full color page of your advertising in an issue that'll be distributed throughout the state for the whole month. And that's a great investment. And you can take it around, and when you're, again, it's your walking business card. You can actually give it to people. So, there's certain areas of business where print is extremely, extremely effective. Cannabis is one of them, because of because of the stigma, because of the perception. It makes you more credible by having something in print. Now there are other print. I'm talking about High Life Media, but I also, I'm including High Times. I'm including Chronic. I'm including Freedom Leaf. I don't want you to think that I'm sharing this message just because I'm like one of the owners of High Life Media. I'm saying, you might want to take a look at print advertising, because they become collector's items in our industry. People read them cover to cover because there's not a lot of places where you can get information and you can get the articles from physicians with a little bit of a artistic piece to it. So print advertising is extremely effective. Also, looking at radio. So I mentioned that I'm a co-host of my beloved show. I love it. Cannabis Life Radio. RB Barroso, who's like my good friend. He's one of the owners of Green Roads. He's also my co-host on the show. My other co-host is Leon Hamilton, and we have so much fun on that show. But there's different ways to kind of advertise. So even like, you know, we get asked for advertising all the time, and we're getting to the point where Arby's feels comfortable. He wants to take advertisers because we've just had so much fun using the space and using the 2 hours. They're like, oh, we don't want to take any more ads because, you know, we're just enjoying talking about cannabis. And, you know, his focus as the leader is on education. So he's like, I don't want to cut into the education time by hawking products, but we are getting to the point now that we want to allow people to advertise. So that's an upcoming opportunity. Please, if you're interested, let me know or contact Arby, and he'll set you up as far as ads for the magazine. But also, you know, there's a lot to be said for positioning yourself as an expert and using that to advertise. So on our show, we actually have people come on, guest speakers, and they're from all over the country, if not internationally, and they come on and they talk about what they do. Well, that's great advertisement as well. And we try to, you know, remember to say, hey, how can people get in touch with you, blah, blah, blah. But if you're provided that type of opportunity to be on a radio show, make sure that like one of the things you will not leave without sharing, because the co-host, the interviewer may forget to ask you, how do people get in touch with you? So make sure you like, and people can get in touch with me by going to our website, blah, 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 or on Twitter, this is our handle, etc., and so on. And I see a lot of people miss that opportunity when they come on my show or other shows because they just didn't think about it. And that's, you know, that's a huge miss. So that's another way to advertise, is looking at radio programming. If they're not taking ads, or you can't afford the ads, position yourself as an expert and be an introducer of what you do. Introduce people to, this is something that will help you. This is something that'll benefit you. This is something that is changing the game, and get an opportunity to present on a radio show. There are a lot of podcasts that are extremely, extremely, extremely popular in the cannabis industry across the country. Find out where they are. So you're based in Florida. You know, you're not limited to just doing, you know, Florida's only cannabis radio show, which is Cannabis Life Radio, on my radio show, but you can be on a podcast with, you know, Rosemary Wallace in, you know, South Carolina, and Jameson Bennett, who's in New York, and really use that as an opportunity to flow traffic to your website, to get interested parties to look at your business. So, it's almost sounding like we're really old school. Like for cannabis, things are reversed and going back in time with print advertisement and radio advertisement, which we've come so much further from that for most industries. But it's super, super effective and super, super appropriate when it comes to cannabis, talking about cannabis. So let's talk about like digital and online. So your website really speaks volumes. That's your best advertisement. Like I had talked to someone about being my brand manager and had some conversations about it. And she's like, you don't have your website yet? And I was like, I'm on a few people's websites, but I haven't done my own website. So I'm going to tell you, don't do what I did. You really need to put a lot of effort and energy into what your website is. How easy is it for people to access the call to action? So sometimes we get so focused on like throwing up a website, putting everything we do in it, but it's not clear, how do I buy something? You need to make sure it's clear how they contact you for questions or inquiries. It should be clear. They shouldn't have to scroll down, scroll around, look in the small font at the bottom to find out how to contact you. Not in an industry this small. It needs to be really prominent as far as your contact information, how they can get more information, their call to action. Also, purchasing or an order or requesting a quote. Any of those things that you want them to do as a result of having met you, having gotten your business card, hearing about you on a radio show, or watching you speak at FCC, that needs to be very prominent on your website. Okay, so let's take, like, I believe in focus groups, sometimes friends and family, but definitely you need the marketing insights. When you develop your website, you can't do it based on, I like this, all the information I want to share is out there. You have to test, how was it received? How did they receive that information? Did it land the way I wanted to? And is it driving the behavior? Is it driving the clicks through to a purchase decision? And you need to be able to measure that. There's, there is a little bit of controversy as far as, paying for raising your profile on Google and things like that. Some people are purists. They're like, listen, I believe in, and I want to be able to say, I had strictly organic growth. And that's okay. I respect that. If you live in that space and that's what's important to you, do that, because then you can honestly say completely organic. I didn't pay for any of the traffic on my website, et cetera, and so on. Now, there's the other school of thought where they say, no, I want to make sure that I have as many likes, as many clicks as possible. I'm going to pay for it, and it sends a striking message, and it is effective in getting more. Raising your profile, especially on a national level, if you can show that constant, consistent flow of traffic. It is also helpful for if you're trying to drive revenue through your website by having people advertise on your website, or having partners flow through your website. When you are pitching, you'll be able to say, I have this many likes, I have this many clicks through, I have this many purchases through the website, and that may affect the decision of that partner or that advertiser to want to use your platform that you've set up to position their brand, and then you gain the benefit of that alignment. So those are things that you need to think about. I think videos are extremely effective. Videos on your website, videos on Facebook. I was talking about doing this webinar with my friend Carrie Accardi, and I'll talk a little bit about her later, but she is the president of 420 Media. They do great stuff she's been working for years to get cannabis advertising on television, so we'll talk about that. One thing she said to me yesterday, she said, people need to understand the difference between likes and shares. It takes the same amount of time to like something as it does to share something. And she's like, that's the key. You want to draw people sharing your stuff, because then they'll touch, your content will touch people that ordinarily wouldn't touch. So I said, oh, that's a great point. I told her I would tell everybody that, that she gave that insight. So make sure that, when you're sharing your videos, have it where it's easy for them to share it with other people. Encourage them in the language. Please share. Like, ask people. It's not begging, but ask them to share your videos. Just as easy as they can just like a video, they can share. They don't have to put any words around it if they're short on time, but really drive that behavior so that you're introducing your brand, you're introducing your products, you're introducing your services to people that you don't know, that are 3, 4, 5, 6 degrees away from you. And that's going to drive interesting traffic. That may drive a future partner. That may drive an investor to your website and to your activity. Another thing that I like in the digital online space is the opportunity to do, PSAs. So, instead of doing something that's really highlighting or focused on your product, your service, highlight the need. Highlight, do an education piece. And, Green Roads does a lot of effective work there as far as really highlighting stories of this is the illness, this is how it affects this family, and this is how we've been able to help them. You can do it in a lengthier documentary format, and that's effective, but you also want to have small snippets that you share that are easily shared to get that messaging out. But when you're doing something from a public service perspective, it's perceived as education, which it should be, and that may be more effective in evangelizing your message, more effective in getting new potential customers, new people who haven't looked at the cannabis space to take a second look, and that's what you want. And that's how our industry grows overall. That's how the patient count grows. That's how the the advertising dollars grow. That's how the investment dollars grow. That's how it becomes more mainstream. That's how we take the fight away from the patient, so they don't have to fight so hard. In addition to dealing with their particular illness, is really getting the message out in a way that is palatable for mainstream and palatable for the masses. So we touched a little bit about social media, likes versus shares. So there's, I think there was a question on the in our chat about, how can you advertise in, on Twitter? How do you advertise, on Facebook? And things like that. When you're in the cannabis space, it is very challenging because a lot of people are uneducated. A lot of decision makers are uneducated. We already saw that this last session, that there are many legislators who are uneducated. And again, they've probably been working on this since 2014, and they still, ascribe to the stigma issue. Sorry, I'm just getting more comfortable. You can get shut down. Like, let's take Facebook, for example. There's no science to what can you say, what can you name your handle for them not to take you down. It changes, it's random. Like, you can say, this person says I sell weed, and that's their name on Facebook, and they're able to post everything. They're posting acres and acres of marijuana, and they're still up, and I'm posting about CBD and I get shut down. That's the reality of our industry. So, again, I talked about, when you name your site or your page, be careful. Keep that in mind. When you're posting things, know that anything you post can be taken down, so back it up. And then you can put it up again, under another page, align yourself with other people who have been successful in having posts remain and things like that. Watch what they're doing. Some people are, tabbing down. So, a few 8 or 9 tabs down before they'll post place a word like marijuana or CBD, and then they fly under the radar and things like that. But, I can't give you a magic formula on, which sites won't pull you down. Well, they all have pulled down people, again, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. They've all taken down pages. They've all, restricted or suspended pages because of posts that they think are advertising an illicit substance or something to that effect. You just have to be, have a plan A, B, and C around it. You need to, when you set up a page, you probably need to set up multiple pages, like one that you're gonna kind of resuscitate if the need presents itself for you to do such. You may want to post everything on multiple pages, so if one gets taken down, the other 2 may remain, things like that. So those are ways that I know people are working around it. Of course, you want to stay within what's legal. You want to you don't want to influence people to commit crimes. It's a delicate balance. I don't understand why the social media sites are refusing to acknowledge that, again, CBD is legal. The 2014 Farm Bill did pass. It was signed into law. There hasn't been anything to undo that. There's there's no reason. There's a Cole memo. There's no reason why they should be taking these sites down, but they're choosing to, and it's their platform, and they can do so. But there are some mitigation strategies that you can use, and you need to know that anything you post is subject to be taken down. So you need to back it up. It can't be where you lose all of your work because Facebook decides to take your page down, because I'm telling you now that you need to have everything backed up. So again, I touched upon Carrie Accardi with 420 Media. I just want to talk more about what she does in the space, advertising on television. So last week I had we had on Cannabis Life Radio a show called The Marijuana Show, and they do television programming around marijuana. It's like a Shark Tank. Now I'm going to talk about Carrie Accardi. So 420 Media, what they do is they actually do advertising on television, and she's been working really hard to make this possible. She talks to networks across the country, and she's identified certain markets where they will let her put ads on television, like 30-second ads talking about the cannabis industry. Some markets, it can't be a product related. So it can be about services, it can be education, it can be PSAs, but it cannot be product related, but that's still progress. She has this concept, it's called Did You Know? And through Did You Know, you can have a lot of times she has celebrities, like other NFL players, like Marvin Washington, Boo Williams has done one that I've seen, and they'll say, did you know that the NFL is one of the only professional sports agencies that tests its players? Soccer doesn't test players, etc., and so on. So that would be a Did You Know? You can be that Did You Know person mixed in with celebrities. So you can actually be the person who says Did You Know and represent your company and have your logo shown, or you can have someone within your company. So let's say you're camera shy. You can have a someone who works at your company do the Did You Know for your brand and talk about something of interest to your brand. So for example, if it was me for Green Roads, I would be probably talking about the health benefits of Did You Know? CBD also helps with epilepsy, cancer, Parkinson's, etc., and so on. That's what I would do. So that's a huge opportunity that just opened up probably within the past 2 months, and it allows us to finally be on television during the there are hours of operation that is permitted. There are certain stations that are permitted. So just to give you an idea of the stations that she touches through 420 Media, you have ESPN, Viceland, VH1, I think TV Land, and there's a number of stations that she can put these ads on. So I think the cost for like being the Did You Know person currently is about $15,000, which isn't bad to consider that you'll be on a 30-day rotation with your company, no matter how small you are. And then she's also doing like deals where she'll put you in other markets as well and things like that. Or you can just have your logo flashed on somebody else's Did You Know concept. So for that, it's $5,000, and then they show your logo during this 30-second commercial, which gets rotated. Again, it can be across markets, and it shows your logo. So that's a very interesting concept. Another one is she does scripted like series, such as an interview series, such as Nurse Talk, where she talks to actual working nurses who are in the cannabis industry, and they're educating people. And then another one she does is called Fifth Quarter, which is really targeting the professional athlete space. So like professional athletes, it's hosted by Marvin Washington, and they talk about cannabis and the need for awareness in sports as far as cannabis. So that's the 420 Media. How do I get my business on television? Well, you can do now, as of the past few months, you can actually do an advertisement for television on major networks throughout your state, which I know Florida, we can do ads, just not products. We can do the Did You Know ads. I know that for a fact, and we can make that happen for you. Going back to the marijuana show, that's a great opportunity to advertise your business. So Wendy and Karen had them on Cannabis Life Radio, and I can connect you with them. They had this Shark Tank concept. So basically, you pitched to them your business for investment. So if you have a great concept, you have a very creative concept, not being done in cannabis right now, or the way you do it in is very different than what people typically see. You can go actually pitch them by email, and then you can actually appear on the Marijuana Show, which is on Amazon Prime. And that's a great opportunity for you to advertise. Another opportunity that I've discovered is the Autism Channel. And Autism Channel is they're about to be on Netflix, they're on Amazon, they're all over. And it's really targeted towards the autistic community and caretakers. And they do interviews with people. I know they had a gentleman talking about CBD. They do fun shows. I got to sit in on a taping of a review by a young man who also is on the autism spectrum. And they did a review of the Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy show. So it was just fun. He talked about things that affect people on the spectrum, like, sensitivity to light and sound and things like that. And it was great. And so you can position yourself to do like some type of interview on a show like that. So look out for those types of those opportunities. And just talking about Autism Channel takes us into a concept that a lot of people underutilize, which is, and it's very important, it's called corporate responsibility. So corporate responsibility should be a part of everything that you do. Like if you're applying for a license, you should have a section on corporate responsibility, how you interact with other organizations that are nonprofits that are doing things. How do you give back? What are your philanthropic pursuits? And that's something I'm big on. I love working with all the organizations. Being affiliated with Green Roads allows me to do a lot of that. So again, we just did the American Cancer Society jail and bail in Broward County, raised money for them. The Wellness brand did supported MS Views and News Gala, and it was great. We were able to give out, our lollipops, and everybody was dressed up nice, and we were able to fundraise, and we had a table, and it just reflects really good on the brand, and it feels great to know that you're helping raise the awareness of these issues, and that you're even helping with research to eliminate these issues. And being in cannabis, it's important that we do this, because when they're directing these research dollars, maybe we can change the research mindset and have them start looking at our cannabis-related businesses as the answer to some of these illnesses. So it's slowly, it depends. Like the old guard is more reluctant, but like when I approached the American Cancer Society here, David Singer he's been running it for 26 years. He was like, "Oh, absolutely. I'm hearing a lot of my patients and the people that I help, they're talking about it. I want to learn more." And then he met with the Green Roads folks and things like that, and was really impressed with their operation and their passion for helping people. So, that's something that I definitely think should be part of your overall, your advertising strategy, is that corporate responsibility piece. What, with your product or service, who are you trying to help? And who else helps those same people? And how can you leverage those relationships to drive awareness to your business and advertise what you're trying to do to help? So that's, whatever, county you're in, or, state you're in, or city that you're in, tap into those organizations. Some will be like, "No, we just don't do that. We would affect our federal funding, blah, 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 blah." That's okay. That's a temporary no. That's like a later, really, because the way things are moving. But you still have to make the attempts. Universities, trying to build relationships with their research departments and letting them know, asking them, "Hey, use my product, use my tincture or to do your research, and can we incorporate this in your research along with the other things that you are testing?" If you have an inside track to a university or a research department, that's great advertising, because when they start talking about it, when they publish their results, that's the best advertisement that you can get being in a health and medical field, is having that relationship and being referenced by a university and their research department for a university. So that's another non-traditional way of advertising that I advocate for. So again, looking at American Cancer Society, epilepsy, Crohn's, you know, things like that. And you don't even have to limit it to organizations around illness. So, you know, if a, you know, sorority or fraternity or other organization, they're having a ball, a gala, etc., find out how much their program book, how much it is in their book. You never know who is also supporting that organization. If there's a JCC in your area, like the Jewish Community Centers, they have fantastic philanthropies. They help a lot of people, and a lot of people support them and what they do. So why not position cannabis in their program book? It may be just as simple as calling them up and saying, when's your next gala, ball, golf tournament, event? How can I get in your program book? Or how can I speak at your event? How much does that cost? They may welcome you. It may cost you absolutely nothing. It may cost you absolutely nothing. All you have to do is ask. And you're touching people who are affected by them, people who are part of their community, and people who sponsor them and give tremendous amount of money to keep them going. They'll be like, okay, they're aligned with me because they also support this organization that is near and dear to my heart. We on the actual ad for this webinar, there's a picture of like a Weed Maps ad on a taxi cab, and I think that's great. Like those are the spaces, like you know, taxi cabbers, the bus stops if you can afford it, and also billboards. Billboards have been huge. Weed Maps uses them. In certain areas of the state, they're going to be less expensive. If you're trying to be in South Florida, it's going to be more expensive. If you're trying to be on 95 in South Florida, much more of a cost related to that. However, you might be surprised. It may be something that you can afford. But then if you're going up towards Fort St. Lucie and things like that, or other areas of the state, it may be affordable for you. So make sure you look at those and look when there's a blank space, say, I wonder how, you know, I'm not going to assume that I can't afford it. Let me find out how much it would cost for my business to be featured in this space, and you'll be pleasantly surprised. I touched upon it a little bit, but I wanted to just reiterate, you really need to understand whether you want a state focused group, or you're targeting just that geographic area of your state, whether you're targeting the nation or if you're trying to target internationally. And then that should drive part of your advertising strategy. Also, communities based on language. You know, Florida is a melting pot, especially the further south in Florida you go. So do you need to do your ads in Spanish? Does Highlight need to have a High Life Espanol? Those are things you want to think about based on the communities that you're targeting. Even if you're like an advocacy group and you're trying to, again, raise awareness, raise the patient count, do you want to do something in Creole to target those particular communities? Are there stigmas in certain cultures, certain international cultures, that we need to drive to overcome? So we need to do materials in those languages. So definitely, you know, give some thought to, as you're making collateral or brochures and business cards and taking out ads, do you need to actually also look at other languages? Do you need to look at doing something on Univision or asking Univision to interview you? Or do you have someone in your company who speaks Spanish that can promote your company on Univision or one of the Spanish stations? When I did the rally in Orlando, with, you know, Gary Stein put it on, Amy Mercado was there, and also Carlos Guillermo Smith, Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith, Representative Amy Mercado. They were out there, and there was also Spanish television out there. That's a huge opportunity. You probably have friends who are strong, passionate supporters of you who speak Spanish or speak Creole. You probably have employees who speak Spanish or Creole. Why not look at the opportunity to be on the Spanish radio stations? Look at the opportunity to be on the Creole radio stations, so that you can target that community and drive some activity. Because I get calls from people like, oh, I want to sell CBD in Haiti, or I want to, I have someone in you know, Puerto Rico who wants to invest money here in the cannabis industry. But if they're listening to those Spanish stations, they're listening to the Creole stations, if they're listening to things that are around their culture, they may hear like, oh, that's the person I need to contact. And it may be just you really thinking about, who are my employees? What are their lives like? You know, what other media opportunities could they open up for our company so we can grow and we can get more, have more of a diverse customer base and more of a diverse employee base. And it's just something that a lot of people don't think about. So you got to get out of that that tunnel vision. So the final thing is conferences. I talked about, you know, the Florida Cannabis Coalition conferences, which are awesome, and I've been fortunate to speak at a number of them on the legal panel. The upcoming one, Canada in Miami, I'm super excited about because I'm actually presenting as well as speaking on the panel, so I'll be able to present twice. But looking at conferences that take place, how can you be a speaker? How can you take part in that? How can you present your brand? How can you get a booth at the conference? Very important, great way to advertise what you're doing. But do not limit those conferences to cannabis conferences. There are other conferences taking place where you can bring the concept. Like something that I'm thinking about is like therapy. Like people who are therapists and psychology conferences. You know, there's that post-traumatic stress disorder component of cannabis, but there's not a lot of conversation happening in the psychology space about post-traumatic stress and disorder and cannabis. So why can't I be the person that brings the conversation to them? And then you have a whole room full of hundreds of people who are now talking about this area, now talking about cannabis. And if they know someone like, oh, my cousin wanted to invest but didn't know who to talk to, they could just look for this girl right here, because I spoke at a psychology conference. So I want to encourage you to do the same. Think outside the box, move outside the box, and really take advantage of these opportunities that do what other people aren't doing. So then you can tap into some new potential customers. So that was those were most of my points from based on my experience, based on at the companies I've worked for, and what I'm currently doing to build a brand to the point where, as Carlos said, I'm working with most people in the industry. A lot of people across the country know who I am, but definitely in Florida, one of the top names that come up when you talk about attorneys in the cannabis space. But a lot of that was, around creating a narrative, creating a brand, making really strategic alliances with companies, organizations, things like that. I encourage you to do the same. There was a question in the chat about the regulations and what they say about advertising. So I just wanted to highlight, these are my very much written on. This is my Senate Bill 8A that I work from, because I access it every day, whether it's for a client or just so I can recall what I'm supposed to be doing as a cannabis law attorney in these times. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a MMTC, so a dispensing, medical marijuana treatment center, and what it says in these regulations about how they can advertise, how they can present themselves, just so you know. So it says, and if you guys are following me, if you've printed it, it's on page 45 of 78 pages, or specifically line 1291. It says, a medical marijuana treatment center may not engage in advertising that is visible to members of the public from any street, sidewalk, park, or other public place except the dispensing location of a medical marijuana treatment center may have a sign. So this is talking about what type of signage a medical marijuana treatment center can have outside to advertise. So affixed outside or hanging in the window, which identifies the dispensary by the business name, a department approved trade name. So we're talking about the difference between like a trade name, a fictitious name. So you have the choice of your business name, a trade name, or a department approved logo. So this tells you that you can't just put any signage outside of an MMTC. You have to get approvals as far as the name that you're using and the logo that you're using. A medical marijuana treatment center's trade name and logo may not contain wording or images commonly associated with marketing targeting children. And I think this is a really good thing to highlight and call out, because even in our advertising, you definitely want to stay clear. Again, we're doing so much work to fight against stigma. You want to stay clear of anything that can be misunderstood as trying to appeal to children. This legislation is really clear that even though we have edibles, those edibles cannot have color. They cannot look like characters. They're doing that for a reason. And even if you don't own an MMTC, I think we should comply and adhere to that as much as possible, and make it clear that we are talking about adult use. We're not trying to have kids who are, using marijuana. We understand we're lawful people, and we think this space should be lawful. A medical marijuana treatment center may engage in internet advertising marketing under the following conditions. All advertisements must be approved by the department. So if you know someone who is fortunate enough to get a license, make sure, and they're asking you for advice as far as advertisement, you want to make sure that they know that, or if you are doing advertising like High Life Media, we do video content, we do organizational messages, we do animated videos, we do all that stuff, we do graphics, we can create posters, etc. But you want to make sure that it doesn't target children, and that it does have department approvals, and that's really, really important. An advertisement may not be an unsolicited pop-up advertisement. So you're not going to see like Trulieve or Knox or Sotera just like pop up on your screen. That's not approved. That's actually a violation. And then if it's opt-in marketing for people to opt in, it needs to be easy for them to opt out. So that's like some guidelines as far as advertising. It does go into detail about what needs to be or what should be on a website, but I'm not going to bore you with that detail. There is another page that I was going to go to for more information, page 65. Pardon me, we'll get there shortly. Okay, so this one, there's guidelines in the statutes about, the Health Department of Health and how they talk about education. So with us being given this opportunity to have medical marijuana in the state, the state's concerned that people need to be educated and cautioned about addiction and things like that. The Department of Health is allowed to do advertising, and it says the department may use television messaging, radio broadcasts, print media, digital strategy, social media, and any other form of messaging deemed necessary and appropriate by the department to implement the educational campaign, basically. The department will work with school districts, community organizations, businesses, and business organizations and other entities to provide training and programming. This is a huge opportunity for people who are in the educational area, and they want to, be a vendor to the Department of Health to provide these types of services. I have a nonprofit with my president of High Life Media called HEMP, which is holistic education means progress, and we're looking to do a lot of educational approaches, including a camp and things like that, to make sure that we can meet the educational need of the state, along with our magazines. So that's something that we are looking at. Also, if you are interested in information on labeling and what's required for labeling, on page 40 of the the Senate Bill 8A, it talks about labeling. So, you know, just to recap where we've been in this discussion, I'm drawing to a close. I don't see any questions still pending. But, you know, we talked about knowing your why. You know, that's really important. Why did you even get into cannabis in the first place? How can you make that come across to your customer base? What's your elevator pitch? What's your 30-second presentation on your why, but with a specific strategic call to action? When you're developing your brand, you know, it's understanding how you pick your name, how you pick the colors, how you develop your logos, being cautious that your logo is not similar to someone else's, so that after building a brand, you'll have to restructure that because you get a cease and desist letter in the mail. We talked about the color green and how it's very attractive, but you know, everybody's doing that, so you may want to do something a little different. Also, different types of media. So the benefit of print, especially in cannabis, how, you know, even people thinking that print media is dead and that everything needs to be online is not so true in cannabis, because we've seen with High Life Media and High Times and Freedom Leaf, these periodicals become collector's items. It's often affordable advertising, and it has a pretty consistent reach because we traditionally haven't been able to advertise on television and things like that. We talked about 420 Media and Carrie Accardi and what she's doing with advertising on television. So that's a new space that's about to open up. And the next one we probably do similar to this, I might, you know, ask her to join me and when she's in town. And you know, she really is very passionate about what she does. So advertising, we talked about the marijuana show and being able to pitch your company on television, on Amazon Prime. How you might get funding just that way, by advertising, by being a part of her show, which is looking for that company, which is a Shark Tank approach to things. We also spoke about partnering with other organizations, understanding how you target caregivers differently than you target you know, the actual patients versus companies in the space. Knowing the distinction between B2B advertisements and B2C, so business to business versus business to customer advertisements, and also really strong corporate responsibility where you're supporting those organizations that, due to law, have been the main sources of support to our patients who are a part of our and building our enterprise, at least, or our industry, at least from a medical perspective, like the American Cancer Societies and Epilepsy Foundation and you know, Crohn's organization, MS organizations, and looking outside of the typical, you know, speaking circuits, as far as we want to advertise and have booths at the Florida Cannabis Coalition events, but thinking, hey, maybe I'll go to a psychology conference or a physician's conference, you know, something that's a little bit outside the space to get your name out there. Using radio advertising on radio stations such as Cannabis Life Radio, which has, you know, 4,400 listeners every single week, and that was our first month, so we're going to wait for this month's numbers. And also a reach of 40 to 90,000, or actually views of 40 to 90,000 on Facebook, and a reach of 300,000 people. So, you know, looking at radio as an option, which is old school, but in our particular industry, it's extremely, extremely effective. And then finally, we kind of closed out looking at the new regulations, Senate Bill 8A, which is now law, has been signed into law by the governor, and some of the restrictions it puts on, you know, MMTCs and their ability to advertise. And one thing I forgot was also the social media piece that we talked about, as far as, are they going to take my ad down? And you know that's a risk, so you need to, you know, be creative as far as how you name your pages, and you also need to mitigate it by backing up everything, because you don't want to be in that position where you lose everything that you've had posted. You might want to post in multiple places and also back things up. So I've enjoyed my time with you. I know we're a little short. I don't know if there are any other questions. I'm going to scroll down and see if there's something that I'm missing. But I haven't. I hope that you're still with me and we're still interacting. Hold on. Let's see. Let me see. I said the question, advertising. So one question that I did answer was, what's allowed for cannabis advertising on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter? We talked about that. How many outlets can we advertise cannabis on in California? I'm not sure. I'm not an expert on California law, and I'm not barred in California, so I may have to connect you with a California barred attorney who may know that. The MMJ advertising in Florida, I talked about that by the statute. Last question, do social media posts need department approval if we're managing a client's social media content? So it depends on the client. So as I spoke about, as far as the statute, the approvals mentioned really were specific to the MMTCs. So if you have an MMTC client, then absolutely. If it's not an MMTC client, then I think you're safe, but we can look more into that, or you can connect with another attorney to investigate that further. So I see we have a side-by-side screen with Carlos. So, you know, Carlos, you're the best. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope this was helpful and education to everyone, and I look forward to planning another session where I can connect with your clients, your customers at Florida Cannabis Coalition.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cheryl. Always a vast knowledge to share, and lots of value to share with the members of the webinar and our members. You're always you've definitely become a staple at our events and everything that we do. So thank you so much.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
So guys, you heard Cheryl. If you have any more questions, please let her know. I have a special deal for the members of the webinar. For everybody in the webinar, I have a deal I want to give you guys. If you guys are interested in seeing Cheryl at an event or becoming, taking advantage of what the Florida Cannabis Coalition has to offer, or even just becoming a member, I'd like to say that we have a special deal going on for people who want to become gold members. If you go to FloridaCannabisCoalition.com, actually it'd be easier just to go to FCCjoin.com, and you click on the gold membership option. If you put in the promo code special month for the monthly option or special year for the yearly option, you can get either $100 off the year or $7 a month off of the monthly payment. So you get to save a little bit of money becoming a member of the Florida Cannabis Coalition and taking advantage of everything that Cheryl has to offer and provides us with content and whatnot. And yeah, you can actually, I kind of forgot that I did this. Wait, no, I didn't do this. Oh man, I didn't do it. Normally I put a call to action button on the bottom of the webinar that says join Florida Cannabis Coalition, but that's not on there. But no worries, just go FCCjoin.com and you'll get the same effect. And yeah, I mean, the
website's super user-friendly. I highly recommend you take advantage of, because they're already affordable pricing, but these discounts are huge. $100 off, I can't believe he's offering that. Please take advantage. And then you will see me at the green carpet event at the beach on the 8th. You will see me at Canada July 29th. Pull me aside, or just ask Carlos to find me, and then I'll meet with you one-on-one, because I really believe in what Florida Cannabis Coalition is trying to do, and that need that they're filling in the state of Florida. It's amazing work, and I thank you for it, Carlos. Take advantage of those discounts.
You're always so kind. Oh, geez.
Oh.
Cheryl, I'll buy you a mimosa at the green carpet event. How's that sound?
Ooh. Just one, Carlos. He'll get me started. He'll get me started.
Well,
My
guys,
first mimosa.
that green carpet event on the beach on July 8th is going to be a great way to get in touch with us. Yeah, if there's anything else, then I guess we're done. No?
Thanks, guys. See you
All
soon.
right, guys. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Cheryl.
You're welcome.